We're coming off the back of AEW's Fight for the Fallen special edition of Dynamite, and there's a lot to talk about, which means it's time for another WrestlePlanet news update, as we saw a wrestling legend debut on the show, a WCW legend is coming to next week's Dynamite, and AEW made several references to CM Punk, essentially confirming that he is all elite. All that and more coming up in today's video, but first, the opening match of Dynamite saw Hangman Page team up with the Dark Order to take on the Elite, and if Hangman's team came out on top, he'd earn himself an AEW World title match as well as an AEW Tag Team title match for two members of the Dark Order. The two teams came out with elaborate entrances, with the babyfaces entering after a cowboy-themed video package, before appearing on the stage under spotlights with the Hangman front and center. The Elite decided to go down the Space Jam route, billing themselves as the Elite Squad with custom jerseys to boot. This is of course a reference to the basketball team, the Toon Squad from the original movie. TNT then used this opportunity to promote Space Jam: A New Legacy, the sequel to the original. The bout eventually turned into a 3-on-1 after several eliminations, leaving Hangman to take on Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks all by himself. Despite eliminating Matt Jackson, Hangman was unable to overcome the numbers advantage, eventually being put to sleep by a one-winged angel from Omega. This was after a belt shot to the head. As per the stipulation, this means the Dark Order and Hangman Page have lost their opportunity at the respective titles, which begs the question as to what's next for the Hangman. Perhaps AEW have something up their sleeve to reverse the restriction, or maybe we won't be getting the Hangman vs Omega match at All Out after all. I guess we'll just have to see where they go with it. Next up, there was a tease for the potential split of the Death Triangle, which of course consists of Pac, Rey Fenix, and Penta El Zero M, as Pac was interviewed alone by Alex Marvez before saying that Penta and Fenix weren't here since somebody cancelled their car from the airport. Andrade El Idolo then walked in to admit that he was the one that cancelled the ride, but then revealed that he had instead ordered them a limousine. This angle teased the breakup of the trio, with Andrade seemingly trying to impress the Lucha Brothers, maybe with the goal of building a faction of wrestlers around him. He most recently recruited Chavo Guerrero as his executive consultant, seemingly to replace Vicky Guerrero as his manager. The show also saw a tag team match with the Pinnacle's FTR and the Inner Circle's Santana and Ortiz go at it. The match was ended abruptly after Cash Wheeler sustained a bad cut on his arm, which caused a lot of blood to gush out, with AEW's medical team immediately rushing to help. The injury occurred when Dax Harwood superplexed Ortiz off the top rope, with Wheeler attempting to follow up with a splash. Instead, in a complete freak accident, his arm was cut on the metal part of the turnbuckle when Santana intercepted him. The match was ended by his partner Harwood after pinning Ortiz with a brain buster. A report from PW Insider states that Cash was okay in the back, which is pretty lucky, as when I watched it, it appeared that he severed a major artery. Luckily he's okay, and we should be seeing him back and healed up very soon. There was also an IWGP United States Championship match with Lance Archer defending against New Japan up-and-comer Hikuleo. The Tongan was accompanied to the ring by his father, King Haku, who made his first ever AEW appearance. Unfortunately for Hikuleo, he was unable to defeat Archer after being hit with his finisher, the Blackout, despite his father's interference. Haku was known as one of the most feared men in wrestling during his heyday, with him often being touted as a legit tough guy out of the ring. He's worked for WWE, New Japan, and worked for WCW under the name Meng. It's currently unknown if he and his son will be appearing in AEW often, or if this match was just a one-off. Elsewhere on the show, AEW Women's World Champion Britt Baker teased the addition of a brand new bodyguard during a promo on Nyla Rose. She told Nyla that she managed to tap her out last week even with a broken wrist, but admitted that she does keep getting hurt. She then said that Reba isn't able to protect her at ringside, especially when everybody is gunning for her, so she claimed that she's going to bring somebody in that's always going to have their back. This seems to suggest that the champion is bringing in a bodyguard to protect the duo going forward. It could be somebody on the roster or perhaps a debuting name, but let me know what you think. Who should Britt Baker bring in as her new muscle? Let me know in the comments down below. The main event of Dynamite saw the second of the 5 Labors of Jericho, with MJF pitting Chris Jericho up against Nick Gage in a no-rules match. Jericho's quest for a match with MJF continued as he managed to overcome this week's challenge. After a bloody contest, Jericho was able to gain the advantage by spraying Gage with a mist to the eyes. This blinded him, allowing him to strike him with a handful of light tubes before dropping him with the Judas effect. As a quick side note, Gage was often referred to as the King of the Deathmatch, which by now we all know is Matt Cardona. Either way, MJF took to the mic after the match to reveal Jericho's next opponent, which will be WCW legend Juventud Guerrera, with the two going one-on-one next week on Dynamite. Jericho and Guerrera go way back, having worked multiple matches during their days in the WCW Cruiserweight division in the 90s. Juvi now returns to TNT for the first time since 2000, where of course he wrestled on WCW Nitro. Juventud is still an active performer, working in the USA and Mexico, although he hasn't done too much since the pandemic. Even so, I look forward to seeing him in an AEW ring to see what he's still got. And quickly, just before we continue, make sure you scroll down and drop a like and subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss any upcoming wrestling content as we head towards 20,000 subscribers. But now that you've done that, let's get on with the rest of the video. And finally, let's get to the daily CM Punk news at this point, as last night's Fight for the Fallen edition of Dynamite saw multiple references to the reported upcoming debut of CM Punk, references that there's no way AEW would make if the signing wasn't already official. The first one came in the opening match where the Elite took on Hangman Page and the Dark Order, as during the contest, Nick Jackson hit John Silver with a high knee in the corner, followed up by a bulldog. This is of course a sequence used often by Punk in his matches. Later in the night, and as we've speculated on over the past week, an event named The First Dance was announced, which is a term recently trademarked by AEW. The First Dance is set to be an episode of AEW's brand new TNT show Rampage, and will in fact be the second episode of the new series. The show will air on August 20th live from Chicago, Illinois, from the famous United Center, home of the Chicago Bulls NBA team and the Chicago Blackhawks NHL team. This is almost certainly the site of CM Punk's AEW debut, with Punk himself foreshadowing this just mere days ago when he posted the song Sirius to his Instagram page, which is music used by the Chicago Bulls when introducing their players before games. In a recent ESPN documentary named The Last Dance, which covered Michael Jordan's final season with the Bulls, the song was used during the opening, and the name of the documentary is what the First Dance is referring to, but if you followed the channel over the past week, you already knew that. Immediately after the announcement of AEW Rampage The First Dance, Darby Allin cut a promo backstage and made a clear reference to CM Punk, and he said, "I'll be in Chicago. You know, I've been around a lot of men in this world that have laid claim to how they're the greatest. There's only one place to really prove that, right here in AEW, even if you think you're the best in the world." The promo was followed by CM Punk chants from the Charlotte crowd. The final reference came at the end of the show following Chris Jericho's main event victory over Nick Gage in the second Labor of Jericho. As we mentioned earlier in the video, MJF announced Jericho's next challenger, which will see him face old rival Juventud Guerrera next week, but at the start of his promo, MJF said, "Chris, as you sit there in more pain than you've ever been in your entire life, I need you to listen to me." Which, for those that don't know, is a clear reference to CM Punk's famous pipe bomb promo in 2011, which began with the line, "John Cena, while you lay there hopefully as uncomfortable as you possibly can be, I want you to listen to me." I'm sure this isn't the last of the Punk references as AEW build towards his debut, and it seems they aren't shying away from the recent reports and online speculation. There's literally no way they'd be doing this if Punk wasn't already signed up, as if they did and then he didn't show up, can you imagine the heat they'd be getting? I think it's officially safe to say that it's clobbering time. And before you go, why not check out my video where I discuss 5 ways that AEW could book the debut of CM Punk.